Welcome to more World of Warplanes content from the Noble Queue, and in this video I'm going to review the Tier 4 German light fighter, the Messerschmitt Bf 109B. Hello there, and let me say immediately, it's good to be back. I've been away for a month from YouTube, and there are two reasons for that. The first is prosaic. I was very busy at work, which prevented me from doing many of the things at home that I like to do, including producing these videos. The second was that I wanted to see what the effect of the influx of CIS players into the game would have upon it. And it is fairly significant, but that's not a topic for this video. What is a topic for this video is the aircraft you see before you. On the tarmac outside my hangar is the Messerschmitt Bf 109B, a Tier 4 German light fighter. And it's an iconic aircraft, of course. In real life, it saw service in the Spanish Civil War. Various of the defects of the aircraft, or drawbacks, such as inadequate armament, were revealed during that conflict, and that informed the production of the more famous E-series and other series later in the war. In this particular game, we have some wing-mounted weaponry on the Bf-109B. It didn't have that initially, partly as the experience of the Spanish Civil War showed. The inadequate armament was beefed up quite quickly. And you won't find the armament lacking in this game, let me promise you. And the other feature of this aircraft is it's one of those which is versatile. You can build it in several ways, and I'll demonstrate that later in the video. So without further ado, we're going to look at the base characteristics of the aircraft. If you don't want to look at a spreadsheet, you'll be missing a lot of good stuff, but use a link below the video to skip ahead to another part of it. Here we have the spreadsheet for all of the Tier 4 fighters. You're spoiled for choice. There are 18 of them. If I scroll along, you'll see it's almost an endless scroll. Keep going, and there's the final one coming into view now. Well, if you don't know how this spreadsheet works, there's a link to an instructional video below in the description. Have a look at that. That will tell you almost everything you need to know about how this spreadsheet is used. So let's take a look at the statistics of the aircraft, and we'll start with the gun armament, and it's immediately good news. The rating is 9, which is third best in class. The cumulative DPS is 171, and that's not third best in class, so bear in mind that rating is not just a question of how hard you can hit the enemy, it's also at what range you can do it. I guess we're getting a benefit here from this range on the cannon, which we'll discuss in a moment. Other aircraft which are more highly rated, the XP-36F Hawk, okay, so it can hit you a bit harder. You don't really want to go head on it, and besides which, why do that when you can outmaneuver it? The P-36 Hawk, likewise with the Hurricane 1A, you can outmaneuver all of these, so don't go head on with these particular aircraft. HE-112 is a little bit more tricky. It's got about the same DPS, and it's got excellent maneuverability as well, so you're going to have to think about fighting that one if you're up against it in a dogfight. Then you have the Bristol, which probably you'll be above and have the advantage over anyway, but again, try not to go head on with it unless it's already damaged. And that's similarly with the I-17, and bear in mind the I-17 has also got a long range cannon, so it will start doing damage to you at roughly the same time you're doing damage to it. A6M10, again, hits very hard, but you should be fighting this by diving upon it, hitting it very hard and speeding away before it can do anything about it. Let's look at the guns in detail. We'll start with the cannon. 20mm cannon which fires through the hub of the propeller, and as I've already mentioned, it's got 1969 feet range, which is excellent, but keep that figure in mind when I come to discuss the machine guns. 360 rate of fire and 67 DPS, so it's not the main damage dealer, and that's also important consideration. Bear that in mind when I come to discuss the machine guns as well. Auto aim angle, the amount you can be off target by and the game will correct your aim, is slightly miserly 2.5 degrees, but it's better than some. The XP-36F Hawk has only got 2 degrees. It's the same as most. If you quickly see the HE-112 and the I-153P DM4 have got the same kind of auto aim angle. I'm just going to show you the one which has got the best, which is the Key 43-1. Really good 3.5 degrees on that. Dispersion angle, that's the amount your shells spread out as they leave the muzzle of your gun, is 0.6. This is fairly standard for cannons. Nothing to write home there. Be careful with the overheat time, only 4 seconds. You want to pulse fire this cannon, and if you're not careful with your weapons, you can run into a problem which I'll describe in a moment. Shell velocity 1093 is quick. If you're near the aircraft, you'll be hitting it almost instantaneously, and you don't need much lead. And some people find lead tricky, so that's a good thing. Now we've got 4 machine guns, 2 pairs. One pair is mounted on the wings, the other pair is synchronized, firing through the propeller. Having said that, even though they're firing through the propeller, in both cases the DPS is 26. There's no adjustment for firing through the propeller, which you might expect, but apparently isn't so. 1200 rate of fire. Now, the range is only 1444 feet, and you're getting most of your DPS off these machine guns. Bear in mind, it is very easy, if you're not disciplined, to start firing at an aircraft at 1969 feet, the range of the cannon. By the time you've got your machine guns on the plane, cannon is overheated. Two approaches to that. More sophisticated players, more experienced players might have been able to separate out their weapons groups and fire them individually off different buttons. I haven't got enough buttons for that, so I don't do that, but it is a possibility. Or wait until you can see the whites of the eyes of your enemy and shoot them with all of your weapons groups at the same time. And that's the approach I think will work for most people. Auto aim angle is 4 degrees, again fairly standard for machine guns, so you get more than you do for the cannons, which is excellent, but then you also get much worse dispersion, again typical for machine guns, so the game spreads out your bullets quite a bit more. Again, that tends to suggest that you ought to be disciplined and only start firing in earnest when you're close to your enemy. The machine guns overheat in 20 seconds, so basically, unless you really are going to sit there with your finger on the trigger for a long time, you're not going to overheat these very easily. Shell velocity, also worth bearing in mind, considerably less than the shell velocity of the cannon. If you are firing at something at long range and it is banking away from you to avoid, you may very well find that one of your weapons groups stops hitting and your DPS goes down correspondingly. So bear that in mind too. So we move on to survivability, and the design philosophy of the Bf-109, in fact all of the Messerschmitt Bf-109s, was for lightweight, and that's reflected in the game with the survivability figure, which is at the low end of the scale. Only 160 hit points, it's a fairly fragile aircraft. Damage resistance is not great at 38, but the fire resistance is excellent at 60. Many of the aircraft have 60, but this does give you flexibility in terms of mounting a first aid kit rather than a fire extinguisher, which is a boon I always appreciate. As far as airspeed is concerned, we've got second best in class, which is excellent. 220 miles an hour cruise, boost is 335, boost duration is a generous 8 seconds, and the dive speed is third best in class at 435. Some of the other high-energy aircraft are pretty similar. As you can see, I've got a 32 here on the XP36F Hawk. The XF4F-3 Corsair prototype is also pretty rapid, but both of those aircraft are not as manoeuvrable as the Bf-109B, so bear that in mind. That's also true of the P-36 Hawk and the P-36 C Hawk, these two here. Now, the Model 81A is quicker, but also less manoeuvrable, and he's also got P shooters, so you should have the time, even if it gets up behind you, to decide that you're not going to run away from it, but you're going to turn fight with it and destroy it that way. And then your airspeed is considerably better than most of the other aircraft. Not the C-714, but you can outturn that as well. You can outturn the Hurricane and probably outrun it as well. And we'll look at the climb rates as well. You may be able to use that to get away from some of these aircraft that we're now looking at. Then you can see the speeds drop off for the turn fighters and run away from these quickly. And indeed, in most cases, you should. Even with a turn build, it's still better to dive on your prey, hit it very hard with your weaponry, and then boost away before it can turn and do anything about it. Leave opponent frustrated. And then perhaps repeat and rinse and repeat, or just fly off and find another target. Altitude performance, maneuverability. Interestingly, for a high energy fighter, this is really good maneuverability. Now, it's not up there with the Japanese aircraft, it's not up there with a well-built Bristol, but it is better than the other high energy fighters by and large. You can see 59 here, 63 here, 61 here, P-36, 63, 64 here. The Hurricane's pretty mobile, but you can still outturn it. 2PA, well, it's basically a hit point pinata, but you can still outturn that as well. You're much more manoeuvrable than this aircraft, although we've lost the manoeuvrability figure there, I tell you. And then we're starting to get into more difficult aircraft. The HE-112 is something you should respect, but if you've built yourself, you've got a turn build and it's an unspecialized aircraft, you'll still outturn this. If you're not in that happy position, then you need to watch this one. It's a very good counter to you. And then we're starting to get into lower altitude performance aircraft, and all of these that I'm scrolling through, you would probably attack by diving on them, hitting them hard with your weaponry, and then boosting away and making sure that they can't get their weapons to bear on you. And for that, you need altitude performance, and you've got it. Best in class. Climb rate is second best in class, 364, so particularly with the turn fighters, if you dive in them, you can climb away as well, but under boost, and make it really difficult for them because they will fall behind and away from you very quickly. With the other altitude fighters, you possibly can't do that quite so easily, but I've already mentioned that by and large you've got better maneuverability than those. So there's your two broad approaches. With the turn fighters, dive on them, with the and boost away. With the high energy fighters, outturn them. Just scroll along, you can see that the altitude figures, by and large, certainly are much, much better than all the turn fighters here. And really only the Model 81A has got a similar kind of performance. If we just quickly look at the power to weight ratios, now we don't know about drag in the game, but nevertheless the power to weight ratios are some sort of indication as to how quickly your aircraft will accelerate. And this is quite important. It's by no means the best in class. There are some you need to watch out for. The P-36 Seahawk may very well accelerate faster than you. So will, surprisingly, the Key 43-1. So just bear that in mind. But having said that, overall, these figures are pretty good. You probably will find that the aircraft gets up to speed fairly quickly, but try not to slow it down too much in case you are in a scenario where you're fighting something and a heavy creeps up on you. You're not going to be able to speed away from it. But look at worst in class figures. We can see there's not much red here. This is a pretty versatile aircraft. We've already said that the aircraft is fragile, so try not to get shot. Boost duration, well, 8 seconds is good. But because the boost figures are compressed across the board, it's actually also second worst in class. And if you can hear that, Dilly is saying, can I please contribute to the video as well? Maneuverability. You need to keep this aircraft fairly fast, as I already said. That 120 there would tell you that you need to. If you start slowing down a lot, you're going to degrade your maneuverability below 120 miles an hour, which is worse than most of the other aircraft in this comparison. And that's about it. So where does this place this aircraft? Well, I think it's really interesting. It's got good weapons. It's got excellent speed. It's got really good altitude performance, yet it is pretty maneuverable as well. And that makes it versatile. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go and look at how I've built the aircraft, and we'll look at a couple of alternative build, at least one other alternative build for you to consider. Broadly, you can build this as a turn fighter, but remember that you mustn't turn fight with the Japanese aircraft, etc. Or you can build it as a speed fighter if you are experienced in that type of fighting. Let's go and have a look at what I've done. Here we are with the Bf-109B outside my hangar once again. First thing to notice is that my aircraft is specialised. That means I have all of the equipment slots and all of the consumable slots available. When you first acquire this aircraft, you're going to be significantly hampered. As you can see, out of 3 equipment slots, 2 will be locked. You'll only have the one in the cockpit. You'll be missing the one on the airframe and also the one on the engine. You've got one of the consumable slots locked. That's on the engine, leaving one on the cockpit and one on the forward firing weapon. So bear that in mind as you go around through it. Initially it's going to be a little bit tricky, but then you'll be using low modules as well. You know this already. Let's pop this back into specialist configuration and we'll see what I've done with it. Go. And here we have it. And what we have is a gun sight in the cockpit slot. No surprises there. Your other choices, as you can see coming up, are, well, you have one cockpit armour. Don't think that's much use on the fighter. You really want to improve the accuracy. And this is an ultimate level piece of equipment. Now, as the CIS players have come into the game, I have begun to think about what I want to do with my gun sights a bit heavier and more. Previously, I would have probably tried to pick off bonus characteristics that supplemented accuracy. I'm now swinging around to the thought that what you ought to be trying to do with your gun sights is inflicting critical damage and fires. So here, with the bonus characteristics, we can see that I've got 2 sets of critical damage and 3% accuracy. This is an experimental piece of equipment, so this is going to vary slightly from the standard piece of equipment, but you get the general idea. If I were reconfiguring this right now, I would probably try to get all of the critical damages and then select the chance of causing a fire as well. At any rate, I should be picking off the 5% accuracy rather than the 3% accuracy. And this is a turn build. As you can see from these 2 pieces of equipment, we've got the lightweight wing frame and the lightweight power unit. And here on the ultimate lightweight wing frame, we've gone for bonus characteristics which I haven't reassembled. We've got roll maneuverability there, I would probably now try and pick off the other role maneuverability characteristic and the yaw maneuverability characteristic at the bottom there, in order to improve the maneuverability as much as possible. If you're going to go for maneuverability, then you should maximize it, in my opinion. There are some other useful things here, particularly the wing's resistance to critical damage. That is worth having to. Not sure about the other two there for a maneuverability build. And a lightweight power unit. And here the bonus characteristics: cruise speed, acceleration with boost, and engine's resistance to critical damage. I like the resistance to critical damage. As for the others, I'd probably pick off the 2% yaw maneuverability, and then maybe go for 1% acceleration without boost, just to try and keep the aircraft fast and well above that stall speed. But there's nothing wrong with the acceleration with boost activated bonus characteristic either. And we'll look at the effects of the turn build a little bit later, and we'll be able to compare it with also a speed build. Just quickly on the consumables, interesting one coming up in a moment. But because the fire resistance is so good, and with this particular build I haven't got an uprated engine on it, the survivability figure resistance to fire is still 60. I feel free to put on a first aid dressing kit, which is always my preference where I can. The alternative is to put on a fire extinguisher, particularly if you had a low resistance to fire here, as you do get on many of the fighters, Japanese ones for example, in which case you're probably going to have to train a pilot with at least fire resistance or firefighter, or maybe even both, but I really regret using those skill points. Engine cooling, always my favourite choice. If you've got at least 1 second's worth of boost available, then this will add another 10 seconds on top. So maximum would be 18 in theory, since your base figure is 8 seconds. If you've got no boost at all, don't activate this, because you won't get 10 seconds from 0. You'll get nothing. Now, in the battle that's coming up, I didn't have this gold incendiary ammunition, and it's a topic for another video. Long story short, because of the advent of what I think are many more critical hits in the game, whether that's because of the CIS players always putting their gun sights to inflict critical damage, whether something's been tweaked in the game by the World of Warplanes staff, I don't know, but I've opted to now start firing gold because I can. However, usually universal ammunition would be the choice here, and for those of you who aren't as blessed with gold as I am, this is a good choice, and you won't be significantly disadvantaged by it. I don't think firing the gold ammunition has actually produced much of an improvement in terms of what I can do against opponents, but it is quite hard to assess. So don't feel worried about loading universal ammunition here, and certainly don't feel pressured into using gold ammunition, as I happen to have on display here. The battle that you're about to see, as I say, was fought with universal ammunition. Alternative builds, well, I would always keep the gun sight, but what you could do is put on a polished skin. Let's do that now. And I happen to have an advanced one lying around here, and an uprated engine. I don't think you've got the option of any boost equipment here. Uprated engine, need to think about this one slightly. You've only got an improved one sitting around, but you'll get the idea. And this is your speed build, and as you can see from some of the red over here, you'll be able to see that your speed goes up, but your maneuverability goes down quite significantly as well, so be careful there. And what I'll do is I will actually get some equipment up to ultimate level, and then we'll do a comparison in a moment. We're not going to do that, so I'm going to reset, so I don't spend 6 tokens mounting this equipment accidentally. Reset. And let's talk about pilot skills. So I've brought up the dialogue for the pilot. Now, if you've got 2 broad builds, 1 speed, 1 maneuverability, I think you're probably going to go for the same set of skills, but you're going to go about it in a different order. So this is a fairly skilled pilot. And if we're going to go for the maneuverability build, then probably I would try and get, certainly if you've got the aircraft specialised, you want to get aerodynamics expert first. If you haven't got equipment, you want to get aerobatics expert first. But in any case, for a turn build, a maneuverability build, you want these 2 skills first, and then probably marksman 1 as well. If you are going for a speed build, then go for engine guru 1, marksman 1, engine guru 2 first, and then work your way up to these 2 skills here, which will then become useful as well, particularly aerodynamics expert. Alternatively, you can go for aerodynamics expert first and then go for the engine guru 1 and 2 skills, and this would be a skill that you take later in the day. And in this particular instance, you can see that I've decided to maximize my accuracy, and I've got marksman 2 on here. So this is a pretty devastating and hard-hitting plane. For later skills, I have been tending to put on resilience, but if you are particularly for a turn build, a maneuverability build, you might consider invasive target instead. And if you've got a speed build, your next skill might be cruise flight. Okay. So let's go and have a look and see what the effects of those two broad approaches to building this aircraft would be on its base characteristics. Here we have another spreadsheet, and this is for the post-build effects. And post-build effects have 4 factors, and that is the equipment that you choose to mount, or indeed not mount, if you can afford to mount equipment, the level to which you have enhanced it and calibrated it, your choice of consumables, and your choice of pilot skills. And what we have in columns C and D here are the base characteristics of the Bf-109B. Then in columns E and F, we've got what I call an agility build. That's using a lightweight wing frame and a lightweight power unit. And then in G and H, we can see the effects of that particular build. We have in columns I and J what I call a speed build, and that's using a polished skin and an uprated engine. And just to note here, there is no choice for a boost mixture injection system at tier 4, and that's important. And then in K and L, we can see the effects of that particular build as well. And green means good, and red means bad. Across both builds, we've managed to improve the accuracy. We've used a gun sight, and that's on both builds. I wouldn't recommend that you change that. What have we been able to do? Well, the auto-aim angle has gone up to 4.5 degrees and above on the machine guns, which is excellent. It's gone up to just a little bit under 3 degrees on the cannon, also good. And then we've also been able to make that dispersion cone tighter so that you're more accurate over longer distances. And there we've got a 30% increase, which translates to 0.56 on the machine guns and 0.42 on the cannon. As I say, that's common to both builds, so I won't mention that anymore, but that improvement in accuracy is really good. Just bear in mind that you could do more with this because your builds will be different to mine. You've got different bonus characteristics you can use. However, I'm beginning to come around to the thought that I'm not going to use the accuracy multipliers bonus characteristics on my gun sights. I'll be using the ability to do critical damage and cause fires much more from now on. But you may take a different view, in which case you can probably improve these figures. All of these figures are indicative. They're not the best that you can possibly do. They're just to show you the general effect. Mounting the lightweight power unit and lightweight wing frame comes at with a penalty for survivability, and although the rating is still 3, you can see that we've lost a few hit points here, and we've also worsened the damage resistance. However, critically for me, the fire resistance is unchanged, which is good. I like to mount that first aid dressing kit, as you know. The airspeed, there is a very slight effect. The rating has gone up to 1. The cruise speed has gone up to 231. Now, that's not reflected in the UI, and I'll tell you for why. It's because I'm using something I haven't mentioned, a chrome paint job on the Bf-109B, which gives me 3% extra cruise speed. However, I know that the UI does not take into account that figure when it shows you your figures, and therefore in my UI right now, instead of 231, we've actually got 224, but that's an error in the UI, and unfortunately the UI is riddled with errors, so you have to be careful how you read that. There is no effect on the maximum boost speed, however. Here's where we really see a big difference. The rating of maneuverability has gone up by 21, nearly 22%, from 69 to 84. And this is spectacular in my opinion. And in theory, that means I can now turn in 8.9 seconds, and I've got a vastly improved roll rate. The aircraft just maneuvers so much better. And there are other improvements not shown here. For instance, the yaw rate is much better as well. And this makes this a really, really versatile fighter in my opinion. And it's the build I prefer. I will say that right now. No effects on altitude performance. And let's go across to speed. We won't talk about guns, it's identical to the previous build. There is, however, still a penalty in survivability, although it's a bit different this time, so let's just go through it. You've got your full amount of hit points again. However, your damage resistance, extra fire, less resistance to pilot injuries in this case, means that you've actually got a slight worsening of 1 point, and fire resistance is down to 44. Now, this is getting to the kind of level where you need to think about whether you want to mount a first aid kit or a fire extinguisher. And I can only say to you, experience will tell. I think this is high enough to continue using the first aid kit, but if it's not, you're going to have to start thinking about using pilot skills on fire resistance and firefighter, which I always regret. The airspeed is where we really see the big improvement here, but it's not that great an improvement, and I'll explain why in a moment. We've gone. The rating's gone up to 41, which is a healthy increase of 5. That's nearly 14%. The cruise speed has gone up to, in theory, 259 miles an hour. Again, the UI won't show that because it doesn't take into account this chrome paint job that I've got. However, and for me, crucially, the boost speed, the maximum speed under boost, is only a little bit improved from a bonus characteristic from the 335 to about 337. And this is what makes the decision for me quite easy. Personally, when I'm looking at speed builds, I want to be able to boost more quickly, and I want to be able to mount equipment that will help me boost more quickly. You cannot do that at tier 4. And therefore, if you're going to use a speed build, you're going to have to be really disciplined and make brilliant use of the improved cruise speed and not be tempted to slow down behind aircraft and lose all of that advantage, because you're not then going to be able to press the boost button and get away extremely quickly with improved boost. Now, you may be able to make that work with the boost as it is. For me, this is what decides me in favour of the manoeuvrability build, but I would recommend that you try both and see which suits you. And then we've got a very slight effect on manoeuvrability. It's a positive effect, but it is very slight. We've got a 2% increase in the turn rate and a very, very slight increase in the roll rate. But this is by no means a manoeuvrable aircraft. You will need to keep it fast. You will need to stay off those flaps. Try and stay as part of a group. You need to absolutely make sure that you are keeping it high. And if you're going to go after turn fighters, you dive on them. You do not go anywhere near a turn fight with them. Okay, so that illustrates two rather different approaches to building this aircraft. I think they're both valid. For me, I prefer the manoeuvrability build, or the agility build as I've called it here. Some of you may be able to make that speed build work a lot better than I can. So, time to go and see what we did in battle with this aircraft. Map for the forthcoming battle is Scorching Sands, the Edge of the World variant. It's a 5-sector map with the sectors laid out in the familiar 5 spots of a die configuration. Strategically, the most important sectors are the 2 military bases, because they will release rockets at enemy territories and attempt to flip them to your sector, provided your team doesn't go and die on that sector, which of course they often do. And then on the other axis, we have a pair of forward airstrips. These are limited to being useful for trying to get to the military bases. You can't repair your aircraft at a forward airstrip, nor can you choose a different type of aircraft. In the centre we have a garrison, tactically important because if you possess this you've got an easy way to get to all of the other sectors, and the way to win this map is to try and hold these 3 sectors and use your forward airstrip to launch attacks against the enemy military base whilst making sure that you defend your own. If we look at the order of battle, we can see I'm top tier in my Bf 109B, and then I have a Focke-Wulf tier 3 Focke-Wulf 159 for company. On the enemy team, they have a pair of tier 4 aircraft, a Bristol 146 and a P36, so they've got one excellent turn fighter in theory, although that's not a specialised Bristol, and then the P36 with its altitude performance, that could very well give me a problem. I should just point out that this battle is prior to the introduction of the CIS players, and that's why there's fewer people on display here now. Typically you've got further 6 people per battle. Right, let's go and have a look at the actual conflict. As we get started, let me mention that this is a World of Warplanes replay file, which means the reticle might be a little bit off target at times. Sorry about that. And basically, since the military base nearest my spawn is the most important sector at the beginning of the game, that's where I'm going to go. I've got plenty of altitude performance, I've got good speed, I can contest those heavies over this military base, and with a bit of luck get one or both of them down. After that, we'll play it by ear. So we see the heavies weaving about to avoid the flak. I want to make sure that they don't get a bead on me. One of them's trying to shoot me. I can now swing on the other one. Wide berth of me. Whittle it down, and down it goes. That's the first kill. I'm in a good position to take the second one out. Feathering the guns a little because we've overheated them. It is easy to do. You need to watch that. And that's both of these aircraft down. And with that, my team completes the capture of this most important sector. I decide to head towards the centre, mainly because I was hoping to get to the military base. That's already not a factor right now. We're going to have to wait for it to unlock. But there's a heavy floating about in front of me without a care in the world. So I'm going to give it a few cares. I'll set it on fire. Managing the guns. As it tries to dive away from me, I'm finishing it off. There it goes. Let's see what else we can do here. See if we can get this light fighter down. And here's where the manoeuvrability build really works for you. You wouldn't be able to do this with the speed build. Sorry about the artifact in the video there, that awful flip. That's nothing to do with me. Just the way the video replays. Soon have this air defence aircraft down, despite its manoeuvrability. And then I spotted there's an easier one to go for, and then I decide to reacquire my original target, shoot that down, and we have the mid-central sector. Now it's time to get rid of the ground attackers before going off to do something else. This time I do choose to overheat the guns because I know that by the time I come back to re-engage that target, they will be cool again. However, spot an F3F coming towards me. I'm not going to let that get on my tail, so I shoot that for preference. Always try and get the escorts. Otherwise, if you're going for the ground attackers or bombers and you leave the escorts, they are very likely to turn on you. My 16 is in front of me conveniently, so I'll finish that off. Now we can return to the ground attackers. See gun management taking place there, despite which I still am overheating this cannon. And this is where those of you who have managed to separate your weapons groups will be in a good position. You could finish off these aircraft with the machine guns on their own. Fortunately, I just don't have enough buttons to do that, but if you do, I recommend strongly that you do separate your weapons groups. Now we're going to defend this base, most important sector of the military base for a little while, take out the heavy, and try and deal with any other threats that are coming in as well. More gun management. And goes the Blenheim. Got a couple of bombers coming in. Decide to leave the one that's already under attack. The other one, only to find that a heavy's engaged that as well. Can't complain about my team playing properly though, can I? Got one of the bombers down, the other one is disposed of by my teammate. We're going looking for other targets. At this point things are going reasonably well. We have a healthy lead. But you can never relax. Try to make sure I don't go and nose plant myself into the ground, and then I spot the P-36 defending the airfield, and I smell an opportunity. High hit point full and robust aircraft, the P-36, so you can see that I didn't do as much damage to it as you might expect. However, with the manoeuvrability build, I'm very confident I can outturn him. Now, again, with the speed build, I wouldn't have been able to approach this engagement the way that I just have. Having killed the P-36, I start on the air defence aircraft, and although I'm getting quite badly shot up there, I have taken this airfield, which is just as well because we lost our local airfield over the other side of the map. Now it's back to the military base to see if we can defend that. Some good defence going on here. Now, of course, now that we have the CIS players on the server, good defence is not something you see that much of anymore. So just bear that in mind. You might have to change the way that you play, and if your team swarms to another sector, you may just have to say, I'm not defending a sector on my own, and I'll go with them. Depends on what aircraft you're in. Just within range of the FW-57, and we get that as a kill as well. Swing back in to protect the garrison if we can. Military base is not under threat for the moment. Then I decide that there is a bomber going in. Maybe I should go for that. Maybe I should go for the other bomber. Got a heavy on the first bomber, so I'm going for the second one. Now we've lost the other airfield. So it's pretty important we keep this military base, because we're under a bit of pressure now. The game's fairly even. Swing around to address what may be attacking me. Turns out to be a Blenheim. It wasn't initially lined up on me, but when I threatened it, it decided to threaten me. Now I'm behind it. With a bit of luck, I should be able to finish it off. And there it goes. So now I'm beginning to assess my options for attacking to see if I can get another sector. We've got a good chance of taking the airfield. So I leave the attacking aircraft, the defending aircraft in the military base, and I go off to see if I can secure this airfield. And at that point we lose the central location and we're 4 sectors to 1 down. So I really must make this attack work. I should have really shot one of the air defence aircraft off to my left there. However, I've taken one out and we've got this sector. But we're still 2 to 3 down in a tight game. And for the first time in the game, I need to get to their military base and see if I can take it. Looking to see what targets we may have. Looks like it may be just the 2 air defence aircraft, and then I spot a multi-role. It's the F3F. I make sure it can't land any shots on me, and now I'm going after the air defence aircraft. If I get both of these, we'll be close to taking this. There goes the Hero of the Sky badge. Unload on the first air defence aircraft. I'm looking for the second. There's another heavy coming in as well, so I need to be careful. And I need to get on with this because we've now lost our military base. Let's see if I can get this heavy down. If I can get this heavy down, we'll have this military base, and boy do we need it right now. The enemy's played this pretty well. There goes the ace notification, that's 20 aircraft destroyed. They've largely avoided where I am, and they've been capturing sectors busily and putting us under pressure. Disposed of the FW-57, and now we're in a contest with one of the human players. We've already established the P-36 can't outturn me. And with that kill, we secured the sector. A little bit of extra damage out of the air defence aircraft before it was shot down. We're looking for other targets, and there is the Bristol 146 in front of me, the other human player. Dispose of the I-16 first before I can. That gives me the kosher dub. Look to see what's in front of me. It's the Bristol. Fly away from it. May just have the manoeuvrability to contest it, but I know in my specialised Bristol I simply wouldn't be able to turn with that aircraft. So discretion is the better part of valour. I fly away from it, and now I'm coming back to see if I can do something about it. It's almost dead. Finish the job. And that leaves us with very few enemy aircraft to kill. In fact, we've just killed them all, and it's the end of the game. 5 chevron battle, 21, nearly 22,000 personal points. Not bad. So let's review the outcome of this battle, and as we can see from the centre, it's a 5 chevron battle, or a grade 1 fighter if you prefer, which grossed 101,542 credits, of which nearly 34,000 came from the premium account bonus. You just go and look for expenses, there are none. The aircraft wasn't shot down, so no repair costs, and I was using prepaid consumables as usual. Aircraft experience 5,232, 1,474 base, premium account bonus 737, and then other bonuses applying from liveries and the like coming in, and first win of the day as well, I should mention, amounting to just over 3,000 there. 261 for experience, 224 base, 36 coming from the premium account. Just a couple of tokens, bug in the game. This is actually the first game of the morning, so all of those medals you can see just above ought to have been tokens. Might have to have a word with support about that. One for the Koshadub and the Ace, but in addition to that, epic achievements, the Marseille there, the Akamatsu, the Winged Legend, the McCampbells, I mentioned the Koshadub already, and the Hero of the Sky. Turn to the personal score tab, we can see that 2 of the 3 class-specific missions were complete. Destroyed when defending, perhaps slightly surprisingly, only 4/5 complete, but still enough points to earn the 5 chevrons. 21,855 personal points. 5 sectors captured, had to be busy there, the enemy was competent. 25 aerial targets destroyed, the ace is 20 of course. Damage to aerial targets of 4,698 with 33 critical hits coming off that rather good weaponry. Didn't lose the aircraft, and we got 800 capture points. That was split, 240 for defending, 560 for attacking. Look at the team score tab, we can see that was enough for first place on my team, both by points and by chevrons. Well played to the P-36 over here. Really made a decent effort with this Tier 4 aircraft. Just unlucky for him that I happened to have a manoeuvrability build and was able to dispose of him the 2 times I encountered him. Decent contribution from a regular player in a down-tiered aircraft, and I'd say the Bristol put himself about a bit to fairly good effect as well. Nice battle to win, it was close. And there you have it. That's my review of the Bf-109B, a versatile plane, and I've shown you the pros and cons of an agility build and a speed build. I prefer the agility build. Those of you who are good with speed builds may prefer that on this aircraft. Whichever build you choose, the weaponry is really good, and you should do well in this aircraft once you've got it specialised. Well, I hope you found that helpful, and that if you did, you'll come and see my future content. But until then, this is the Noble Q, signing out.